Hi friends, here with Lesson 3, Module 7. Today we're working on bar graphs instead of picture graphs, and I'm on page 103 of my Succeed book. And we're going to create a bar graph here using the data in this table. So then we're going to answer some questions, but we have to we have to make our graph before we can get to the questions. So looking at this table, what would the title of my graph be? If it's the same data that's in the table, we're going to use that same title. Now, that is an awful lot to write for my title. I am going to write animal coverings. That is what is my title. Animal coverings. And you don't need to try to copy it from me. It's right there in your Succeed book from the table. All the information we put in here, we're going to get from here. We don't have to make anything up or figure anything out. It's all right here for us. There are 4 types of animal coverings in this pet shop. We are going to put those 4 kinds over here on the side. So we have fur, feathers, shells, and scales. So fur and feathers. It's not going to be easy to write just the capital letter like we did yesterday because there's 2 F's and 2 S's. So fur, feathers, shells, and scales. Now this is different from the picture graphs that we were working on before. Here we are keeping track of the number of boxes. That makes the graph easier to read. It starts at 0 with this line. If it's colored up to this line, there's 1. If it's colored up to here, it is 2. We are just writing our numbers straight across the bottom. Okay. So for a bar graph, differently from the picture graph, we're not drawing a picture in the boxes. We are going to actually shade in a box for each animal that has that particular covering. So how many of the animals at Jake's Pet Shop have fur? There are 12. Now you can do this with your pencil if you like. It might be just as easy or easier to do it with a crayon. You don't need to do a different color for every graph. You can, for each category, you can do the same color. We do want to make sure though that we are using the row that matches that one. This is the empty one between. So for animals covered in fur, I'm going to go all the way to 12. And I'm going to go ahead and color in that last box. Remember, it's math, not art. My box doesn't have to be colored in all the way. But this way I'll know I won't go too far because you can't erase crayon. So I am going to color in my boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and there's my 12. Good. I'm going to skip this row so that we can really see our bars clearly. The next one is feathers. How many animals have feathers? 9. Here's my 9. I'm going to follow this back up to feathers. And I'm going to color in that last box so I know not to go past that. That is 9. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. many animals are covered in shells? There are 8. So I can look in here, or I can just know that there's one less than feathers, right? So I'm going to color in this box. This is 8, and I won't go past that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. How many animals have scales? 11. That is right here. So I'm going to draw my line there so I know I can't go past that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, if you need to pause because it's taking you a little bit longer to fill them in, that's fine. But do remember, you don't have to fill in that whole square, okay? It's math, not art. It might also take you longer if you're doing a different color for each row, and that's fine. If you need to pause, go ahead. I'm going to move on to the questions. We're still working on those comparison questions. How many more animals have fur than shells? We need 2 pieces of information. We need to know how many animals have fur, how many animals have shells, and then we compare those 2 numbers. We need to know the difference, okay? Whether they're asking you how many more or how many fewer, we're trying to find out the difference between the 2 numbers. So animals that have fur, that's 12. Animals that have shells, that's 8. How many more is 12 than 8? Well, we can subtract 12 minus 8, or we can count up from 8. 8 plus something equals 12. So I have 8. I'm going to count up to 12. 9, 10, 11, 12. How many more did I count? Okay, so I would need 4 more shelled animals for it to be the same as fur. That's what we mean when we're talking about the difference. In a bar graph, you can also do this. You can do it with your pencil. Here's the shells. And here's the fur. How many more are there? How many more would shells need to be the same? And you can see it that way too. All right, so we would need 4 more for them to be the same. There are 4 more fur than shells. Which pair of categories has more? Fur and feathers or shells and scales? Which category has more? And this is 2 categories. So what we have to do is not compare fur and feathers. We need to add that because they're saying it's a pair. So we need to add fur, which is 12, with feathers, which is 9. I have 12 plus 9. We are adding them together. We're joining them. So if this were a 1, 9 and 1 would make another 10. If it was 9 and 11, the answer would be 20. But this is 1 more than 11. So this is 1 more than 11. So 9 and 12 is going to be 1 more than 20, which is 21. So that's how many animals have fur and feathers combined. How many animals have shells and scales combined? Shells is 8 and scales is 11. So now I can add my 1s 8 and 1 is 9, and I have one more 10. So this one, shells and scales, is 19. Now I just have to look at these. Which categories have more? Two questions they're asking me. They want me to circle the pair. So is fur and feathers bigger or shells and scales bigger? 21 or 19? 21 is more, so we're going to circle fur and feathers, and then they ask the comparison. How much more? How many more does 19 have to be the same as 21? What's the difference between these two numbers? So we can subtract 21 minus 19, or we can say 19 plus what equals 21. And I think counting up from 19 is easier. So I'm going to hold 19 in my hand and count until I get to 21. So 19, 20, 21. How many more? Only 2 more in this category than this one. So now, again, they're asking us to write our own comparison questions. Yesterday we were talking about how many more blank than blank. So today I'd like you to think about how many fewer blank than blank. And here, because we're saying fewer, whichever one has the smaller number needs to go first. So if I'm going to say how many fewer, and I want to compare fur and feathers, I have to say feathers first. How many fewer feathers, how many less are there here than here? What's the difference between them, but the smaller number goes first? How many fewer shells than feathers? Feathers has more. So this one has fewer, that shells would go first. So you can also do a combination if you would like. How many fewer animals have fur than have feathers and shells combined? Then we would have to add those two and subtract that one. There are a lot of different things you can do. I'm going to do that. I'm going to say how many fewer fur animals than feathers and shells. That's my question. How many fewer animals have fur than have feathers and shells? So fur, there's 12 of them. Feathers is 9. Shells is 8. So in order to answer my question, I have to add 8 plus 9, which equals 17. I can take 1 over from the 8 to make this 10, and then I would have 7 left. So 10 and 7 is 17. So then I need to know how much less is 12 than 17. So it would be 17 minus 12, or 12 plus something equals 17. So let's just subtract the 1. 7 minus 2 is 5. 110 minus 110 is 0 tenths. So how much fewer? 5. There are 5 fewer with fur. Again, if you need to pause to catch up and kind of digest all of that, that's fine. I'm going to move on to the last page. This is page 104, and it's the same thing. We're going to use this table to complete this graph, and then we're going to answer questions. All right? So this is just the next page, page 104. I'm going to use a crayon again. Oh, first I'm going to write with my pencil. City shelter animal diets. I'm going to call it animal diets. If you want to write the whole thing, you can. But in the city shelter, they have meat eaters, plant eaters, and both meat and plant eaters. So carnivores, herbivores, omnivores eat everything. And we need to write those things down here. So I'm going to put a capital M, a capital P, and then here I'm going to say M and P, meat and plants. All right? So they've already put the numbers in here for us. That's nice. Notice that this bar graph goes up and down, whereas on our first page it went side to side. The numbers are on the bottom when it goes side to side. The categories are on this side. So now we're just turning it. Our categories are at the bottom and our numbers are up and down on the side. So looking at our table, for meat only, remember when you have the diagonal, that's a group of 5. So we have 5 and 3, which is 8. I'm going to do the same thing just because I can't erase if I make a mistake with my crayon. If you're using pencil, you don't necessarily need to do this. Oops, not there. Here, where the letter is, they leave a couple of the columns blank. Now, I still count as I'm coloring up to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But like I said, I don't want to make a mistake because you can't erase it. So here we have the group of 5, and then we have 4 more. So this is 9. That's going to be just 1 more than there were meat eaters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And look at this. There are a lot of animals that eat both meat and plants. 5, 10, and 4 more. So we have 11, 12, 13, 14. That's all the way up to the top. I'm going to fill in every box, so I don't think I need to mark that. I don't even need to count these. I know I am going straight up to the very top to show 14 animals that eat both meat and plants. All right, so I was probably supposed to put that in that column. That mistake is okay. It's not going to mess me up. First question, how many total animals are in the city shelter? This word right here tells me what I'm going to do. I am going to add, but I am going to have to add all of the groups. So I am adding 8 plus 9 plus 14. 8 plus 9 plus 14. Here's what I'm going to do to make this easy for myself. I am going to take 2 away from my 8. If I take 2 out, I'm going to have 6 over here. And then I'm going to give 1 to the 9 to make it 10. And I'm going to give the other one to the 14 to make it 15. Now I have 6 plus 10 plus 15. That's a much easier problem to solve. 15 and 10, that's 2 10s and 5 1s, so that's 25. 6 plus 25. If I was adding 5, I would have 30. but I'm adding one more than 5, so I'm going to have 31 animals. Now we have a comparison. How many more meat and plant-eating animals are there than meat only? How many more meat and plant-eating animals are there than meat only? So we need to know two numbers. How many animals eat both meat and plants? 14. We also need to know this one. How many eat only meat? And that's 8. We need to know what is the difference then. What is the difference between 14 and 8? Again, we can subtract 14 minus 8. We can count up. 8 plus something is 14. It might be a math fact that you already know. We are seeing what is the difference. So I can also take my pencil here on the 8, and there are this many more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 14 minus 8 is 6. 8 plus 6 is 14. That is the difference between those two numbers. If 3 animals were removed from each category, how many animals would there be? So, if we took 3 animals away from the meat only, how many would we have? If we took those 3 away, we would have 5. If we took 3 away from here, we would have 5 and still 1 left, so that would be 6. If we took 3 away from here, we would still have 1 tally mark left over here, and then 5, 10. 10 and 1 is 11. So that's an interesting one. 5 plus 6 plus 11. I know 5 and 6 equals 11. So I would have 11 plus 11. Add up the 1s and the 10s, and I'm going to have 22. The final thing is to write your own comparison question based on the data. Now, we didn't talk anything at all about the plant eaters, so maybe your question should be about that. You could write how many fewer plant eaters than animals that eat both meat and plants. You could say how many more plant eaters are there than meat eaters. But you can't say how many fewer plant eaters than meat eaters, because this isn't smaller. It's bigger. So if I wanted to compare these two, I would either have to say how many more plant eaters or how many fewer meat eaters than plant eaters. If I'm going to say how many more, I start with the bigger group. If I say how many fewer, I start with the smaller group. So go ahead and write your own comparison question using this data and answer it. I know it's hard. You guys are working so well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.